Well, one of the big moves on the campaign trail today was the eruption of power bills and energy as an issue. Prominent energy experts have poured cold water on the Labor Party's energy policy, warning that their promised $78 billion transformation of the electricity grid will in fact force up power prices. Labor have been accused of botching their policy and leaving consumers worse off. In a scathing assessment, the Managing Director of Frontier Economics, energy economist Danny Price, warned logistically it doesn't make any sense. The reality is that prices are going to go up. Let's get into this now with my Tuesday night panel from Adelaide, Dr. Jennifer Oriel, and from Sydney, taking the place of John Anderson, who's overseas at the moment, economist and senior fellow at the IPA, Dr. Andrew Stone. Andrew, I'll come to you if I can. They're saying economists today $560 per annum to the average Australian power bill after Labor's put out this policy. They say it's not true, says Labor. Experts disagree. I know you're a bit of an expert in this area yourself. What's your view?
Good evening, Peter. I can't speak to the specific $560 figure because I believe, in fact, the government hasn't exactly explained where that claim comes from. But I think there are perhaps 3 points that can be made here. First of all, I think Danny Price is quite right. If you're asking power companies to spend around $60 billion on changes to the grid, upgrades to the grid to be able to handle all this renewable energy, then they're not charities. That has to be passed on and paid by someone. And indeed, that's the basis. There are formulas built into the arrangements whereby that gets passed on to consumers. And indeed, that was a large part, along with the carbon tax, of why electricity prices doubled under the last Labor government. So I'm surprised they're wading into this area again in such a fashion. Second point to make is, even if you've defrayed those costs a bit by having as the Labor Party says, having the taxpayer come to the party by chipping in $20 billion of low-interest loans and so forth, that doesn't mean that becomes free. All it means is you've transferred the cost from consumers to taxpayers. So you and I and everybody else will still be paying. We'll just be paying in our capacity as taxpayers rather than as electricity consumers. But finally, the third point to make about this, I suppose, is that this would be a very powerful attack from the coalition, or a much more powerful attack from the coalition, if they hadn't themselves committed to a net zero policy by 2050. Because in a sense, if having made that, I think, deeply unwise and nonsensical commitment, it can be argued this is just a question about timing. The Labor Party is saying they'll make these investments much more rapidly because they're going earlier, but it rather blunts the coalition attack if they're saying they're going to have to spend the same amount at some point, just over a longer period.